bring your soul to life. Selected ones. People who underestimated the incorrect one are abundant in the graveyards. They believed they had. You were done, buried, and wrapped up. When they believed they had finally crushed you, they created traps for your demise, smeared dirt on your name, and even had the audacity to host a party. But you're still standing here. Not to mention standing taller than before. How? This is a fact. According to scientific research, a bone that fractures and recovers becomes much stronger at the site of the break. And you experienced just that. They were unaware that every assault, treachery, and setback strengthened rather than destroyed you. And now they're like, wait, wasn't this person supposed to be down for good? As they go over their notes, bewildered. You're out here prospering in the meanwhile, like a character in a movie who didn't want to die in the last scene. So let's discuss it. Why can't the selected be stopped? Why does everything that they intended to destroy you simply make you stronger? Hold on tight. You'll understand why you're still standing and why they can't take it by the time we're through. First of all, you weren't engaged in combat. It was a test you were passing. They were really doing you a favor, even though they believed they were harming you. Every failure, treachery, and challenge. They weren't only sporadic conflicts. They were assessments. You were never punished by life. You were qualifying yourself. Success, tranquility, and knowledge are not given to the chosen ones without first being put to the test. You needed to demonstrate that you could manage the following step. Because of this, nothing went as planned. While you were unwittingly getting ready for a whole other game, they were playing checkers and planning a few moves ahead. They were essentially setting you up, even if they believed they were bringing you down. Every falsehood spoken about you, every individual who left, every instance that caused you to doubt everything. It wasn't all random. It was all intended to show your true self. You see, when things don't go their way, most people snap. When pressed, they fold. When they lose support, they lose themselves. But you waited. You didn't just make it through the flames. You adjusted to it. And that's what makes the selected different from the others. You are not intended to be destroyed by the tests. They are intended to reveal your actual strength. And those who are unable to pass, the table was never intended for them. You're going inside. They are perplexed by it. They believed you would die in the battle. The strain polished you, contrary to their expectation that it would smash you. It destroyed the uncertainty, the frailty, and the desire for acceptance. You left the flames by walking, more powerful, lighter, and sharper than ever. They have never had to take the exam themselves, thus they don't comprehend it. You're still standing now, not because you were fortunate. You earned it, not because you received assistance. And nobody is more dangerous than someone who has been put to the test, broken, and yet won't give up. Secondly, they fail to see that you are not playing the same game. They don't comprehend your movement, thus they don't understand how you're still standing. All their lives, they have been playing by the same rules. Deceit, manipulation, and control. They thus believe that's how everyone works. They are unable to identify you because of this. They battle for power, but you don't. You don't plead for approval. An audience is not necessary to validate your power. While they've been occupied with planning and scheming, they have no idea how you have been developing yourself. You see, the majority of individuals around the globe struggle for power in the wrong manner. To advance, they stomp on other people. They depend on outside factors like money, position, and connections to feel significant, and they seem to be confident in order to conceal their insecurities. But you have inside power. It originates from a deeper, more solid source. They find that alarming because they are unable to take away something they have never given you. They made every effort. Setups, betrayals, lies, and rumors. What they normally do, they did. You can expect to come apart if you play dirty. However, nothing was effective. Not because it was not felt by you. Your strength was never based on the same principles as theirs. Not because you were unaffected. When you have inside power, attacks from outside become less effective. You don't exist on the same frequency as them, thus they can't contact you. They're perplexed because of this. They anticipated that you would respond similarly to them, seek retribution, break down, and get enmeshed in the mayhem. However, you chose to remain quiet, moved in a new way. As you rose beyond their grasp, let them think they had triumphed. They panic because of it. They are stuck trying to find out why they never had influence over you in the first place, but they discover this too late. While you're still standing, ascending, and impenetrable, nothing they did worked. The reason for this is because you were never included in their game in the first place. They will never be able to match the level of play you've been playing on. Third place. The race wasn't done, but they celebrated too soon. They believed it was over. The second you lost, the second you faltered, they rejoiced as if it were the last chapter. Believing they had seen your doom, they laughed, muttered, and watched from the sidelines. They didn't presume you were in a relationship. They wanted you to be depressed because you served as a constant reminder of everything they lacked: your presence, your tenacity, and your will to keep going. They were unaware, however, that the race was far from finished. You didn't lose. While they were busy spreading the word about your alleged failure, you were rebuilding. You were honing your skills in the background. You made gasoline out of the hurt, the loss, and the treachery. You weren't wallowing in your misery. You were changing. What was lost didn't bring you any tears. You were picking up new movement techniques. That was the unexpected part. They didn't see what was about to happen since they were too busy boasting. They believed you had been buried by the barriers, the backstabbing, and the locked doors. However, they misinterpreted the procedure. Selected ones don't just reappear. They return wiser, stronger, and utterly different. They counted out the version of you. There is no longer a version of it. They're now perplexed, observing from afar, attempting to comprehend how you're still moving, standing, and triumphing. They don't realize that although they were celebrating your alleged victory, their insults merely made you undergo a change they didn't anticipate. You were growing unstoppable in silence. The greatest part is that you don't even need to convince them of anything. They rejoiced too soon, as shown by your presence and your perseverance in the face of adversity. They provided you the ideal excuse to soar even higher, even if they believed they had won. Fourth place. Instead of breaking the real you, they shattered the phony one. They removed everything that was never really you in the first place. Even if they believed they had destroyed you, they destroyed the version of you. That version was based on acting small, seeking acceptance, and bearing burdens that were never yours. That version has to be removed. You weren't broken by them. They shattered the delusion you were living with. You see, people like believing they are in control of you and can control your feelings, identity, and desire for acceptance. They thrive on the knowledge that you previously valued their thoughts, approval, and acceptance. They thus anticipated you to crumble when they deceived you, left you, or destroyed you. And you most likely did for a second. They were just severing the parts of you that were never supposed to be there. However, and they were unaware of this, the fake identity, which was based on reducing oneself in an attempt to fit in, fell apart. To ensure the comfort of others, on the idea that loyalty and affection had to be gained by hardship. However, the true you, the unbreakable you, that aspect of yourself remained unaltered and whole, awaiting the day when you would at last completely embrace it. They're now perplexed as a result. All they did was set you free, even though they believed they had destroyed you. The purest, strongest version of yourself was left standing amid the ashes when the illusions were destroyed by every loss, disappointment, and agonizing experience. Nothing of value was taken from you. What was no longer useful to you was shed. You move differently today. You have a different way of thinking. You no longer ask for approval to be yourself. People who were never supposed to comprehend you no longer feel the need to prove yourself. The boundaries have been crossed. Now that the mask is gone, you are absolutely impenetrable for the first time since they could never break the real you. Fifth, you were able to live by using a greater frequency of operation. They don't comprehend the level you function on. Thus, they can't figure out why you're still standing. The majority of people are totally dependent on the material world, ensnared by their desire for approval, fixated on status, and in dire need of safety and ephemeral possessions. They borrow their strength. It relies on outside variables, people's perceptions, and favorable situations. But that's never how you were made. Your power originates from somewhere above, from something beyond of human control. Because of this, nothing they tried worked. They attempted to break you by using strategies that are effective for the typical individual, such as rejection, betrayal, and disappointments. They thought you would respond similarly to them, to get lost, to fold when pressed, to disintegrate when circumstances were difficult. However, they made the error of believing that you were following the same guidelines. They are pursuing things that you are not. Approval, recognition, or financial gain are not the cornerstone of your business. You are never dependent upon their system for support. They are perplexed by it. They see you lose everything, but you remain intact. People turn against you, they see, but you don't want retribution. They perceive barriers put in your way, but you continue to move as if nothing had occurred. The reason for this is because your strength comes from inside. It's within. It has a spiritual component. Human hands are incapable of touching, manipulating, or destroying it. When the global system fails, those who depend on it get anxious. Their collapse occurs when their support system, money, and reputation are all destroyed. But your base is something bigger, which is why you keep surviving. Transient losses don't affect you. Fear does not govern you. You're living your life to the fullest without waiting for approval. They are frightened by it, because you continue regardless of what they do or how hard they try to stop you. They will never comprehend the frequency you operate on, and they are unable to shatter what they do not comprehend. Sixth, they don't understand that solitude is the source of your strength. Not true. They don't know where you get your strength, which is why you're still standing. Most people's strength is determined by the people around them. To feel important there, they want affirmation, care, and acceptance. People clapping for them is what makes it work. Acknowledge that you are observing them. If you take it away, they fall apart. But while others were out seeking attention, you were created in the quiet. Don't give a damn. In alone, you were becoming into something others could never be. They believed you to be insignificant, lost, and lonely. They thought you had nothing to contribute since you weren't in the limelight. Recognize that being isolated wasn't a penalty. It served as your practice area. Their assaults didn't shatter you because of this. They believed you would get weaker if they excluded you. They believed that being rejected would drive you insane and make you desperate. However, you were honing your skills in the hidden locations while they were busy entertaining the audience. You were becoming more disciplined and wise. Applause does not equate to clarity. The fact that the person they previously disregarded and believed had nothing to offer is now standing, unfazed, has left them perplexed. Approval is not necessary for your business to feel complete. You are aware of your value without validation. And because they do, they find it unsettling. They didn't realize it was your development chamber, so they interpreted your seclusion for weakness. You were untouchable in real life, and now that you've emerged fully developed and unstoppable, they're ill-equipped to deal with it. For someone who has nothing to require, they are 7 in number. You were calculating, but they mistook your stillness for weakness. They saw your quiet as a sign of failure. They assumed you had nothing left in you and interpreted your lack of response as weakness. They awaited your outburst, your plea for comprehension, and your demonstration. However, you didn't do any of it, and it was the main source of their confusion. You see, most individuals respond to attacks right away. They get sentimental. They get careless. They hold out their hand. But you got it. They were never able to. Power comes from silence. While they were busy talking, they were revealing their anxieties and causing trouble. You were observing, analyzing their trends, making notes, and discovering all the information you needed to determine who was genuine and who wasn't. You weren't wasting energy on useless conflicts. It was being saved for something bigger. Because you didn't respond to their attack in the manner they had anticipated, they believed they had won. However, they were unaware that you were never really playing their game in the first place. You weren't concerned with fleeting triumphs or establishing a point. You were strengthening your intellect, your fortitude, and your next course of action. You're 10 steps ahead now. They've just now realized that you were never broken, just redirected, calculated, and never lost. You weren't the same person they attempted to destroy when you returned because of this. They anticipated your desperate, striving, and validation-seeking return. Instead, you arrived unfazed, more powerful, and untouchable. They're having trouble understanding it. You didn't give up by remaining silent. It was a plan. You were leveling up in unexpected ways while they were busy celebrating your alleged demise. They are unable to cope with the reality that all they tried to break, you simply made you more deadly now that you have returned, fully matured. The 8th number. The strikes destroyed your attachments, not your spirit, as they had feared. They removed the things that were burdening you, but they believed they were destroying you. It wasn't the end of the assaults. They marked the start of your independence. They anticipated that the suffering would cause you to forget yourself, to doubt your value, to crumble under the weight of treachery. However, they just broke the shackles you were never supposed to wear in the first place. You lost folks. Let's be honest, however, you were never really for those folks. They served as stand-ins, diversions, and teachings masquerading as interpersonal connections. You didn't lose out on their leaving. You were saved by it. The rejection, the desertion, the treachery. Because it exposed the person who never merited a place at your table, everything worked in your favor. They believed that leaving would leave you feeling empty, but in reality, it created room for something bigger and the solace you had lost. That delusion of stability, that false feeling of security, the conviction that certain people would always be there. To begin with, it was never genuine. You weren't leading an honest life. Attachment was your way of life. And you weren't broken when life pushed you outside your comfort zone. You were woken. All of a sudden, everything became clear to you. You were aware of who was genuine and who wasn't. You gave up on people, circumstances, and ways of thinking that were only serving to limit you. The strikes were supposed to break your spirit, but instead they made your vision clear. You stopped pleading for love. Approval is no longer your goal. You no longer cling to others because you're afraid of being alone yourself. Because you are aware of who you are today. They are frightened by it. For someone who has everything to gain and nothing left to lose. That is the world's most powerful force. Nineth, you were the source, yet they believed you needed them. They persuaded themselves that their presence in your life, their connections, and their approbation were the reasons you were succeeding. They thus anticipated that you would disintegrate when they withdrew, cut you off, and refused you access. Here you are, nevertheless, still standing, rising, and developing. They are now the ones who are having difficulty determining the cause. In actuality, they were always in reverse. The source was you. The strength, the vision, and the enthusiasm came from you. You weren't being helped by them. They were taking advantage of you. They didn't realize that you were the one helping them, so they mistakenly thought you were dependable. Your thoughts, your support, your presence, and your light. They felt significant because of it. They stayed afloat because of that. However, they became avaricious. They believed you needed them, that you would be nothing without their approval, their assets, and their network. They withdrew, anticipating your collapse. But you thrived rather than collapsed. The truth is finally beginning to set in. You had nothing taken from you. They just take themselves away from what they need. They left the well where they were getting their drink. They turned their backs on the energy that kept them going. And it is the reason for their confusion. They believed that without them, you were helpless. Now, however, it is them who seem disoriented, exhausted, and trapped. In the meanwhile, you continue to proceed entirely untouched. Because, in reality, your power was always inside. It was always inward. Your source was never them. They had you. They're also discovering too late that you were the blessing on number 10 all along, now that they've cut themselves off. You weren't being fought. They were against everything you stand for. They believed they were engaged in combat with you. In actuality, however, they were battling against everything they lacked. Just your presence acts as a mirror, showing them what they may be if they had the guts to take charge of their own destiny, the self-control to complete the task, and the moral character to act without coercion. However, they don't, and they chose the simple route rather of evolving or rising up. Their fears were reflected onto you. The assaults seemed so personal because of this. This explains why the gossip, sabotage, and envy suddenly surfaced. In actuality, however, it was never about you. You were only the catalyst. They were reminded of their escape by your presence. They were reminded of their vulnerability by your power. Their justifications were revealed by your tenacity. They have no intention of destroying you. They were making an effort to block out the awareness that they had made a compromise. And you're still standing because of it. Because their true adversary was never you. They were struggling with self-doubt and the realization that, while they knew deep down that they are capable of more, they refused to put in the effort. So they assaulted the one who did instead. The one who refuses to shrink, compromise, or fold in order to make themselves more comfortable. They believed they would find peace if they broke you, but they were wrong. Because their true struggle is within rather than outward. Furthermore, you are not the issue they are trying to solve, despite their best efforts. That's why you continue to rise. Why their strategies are ineffective. Why they're left feeling worn out while you go on. Because stopping you was never the point of the war. They were trying to hide the reality of who they were. And what's wrong within them will never be fixed by any number of assaults on you. 11. You don't need retribution. Their punishment is your progress. Retaliation. It is not necessary for you. You don't need to do any work, plan a retort, or establish a point. Achieving success in spite of those who attempted to break you is the most destructive thing you can do to them. They wanted to see you wallowing in resentment and fury. Instead, you changed. You surpassed them in height and outgrew them. They must now watch you triumph from a distance. They didn't anticipate that portion. They believed that the suffering they inflicted would ruin you and that you would use all of your energy attempting to make them regret their actions. However, you wasted little time in seeking retribution. Rather, you channeled that energy toward becoming a better version of yourself, healing, and growing. They are no longer able to access, much less comprehend. They're haunted now, not out of guilt. Since let's be honest, the majority of them will never acknowledge their mistakes, but alone. By realizing that they provided you every excuse to fall, they failed in their attempts to stop you. Yet here you are, prospering. You hurt them back, but that doesn't mean they stop sleeping. The reason they lose sleep is because you didn't have to. The true penalty is that they are unable to claim credit for your accomplishments. They cannot say that they created you. Worst of all, they are no longer able to touch you. They are trapped where they always were, watching resentful, wondering how you managed to develop outside their grasp. The irony is in that they believed they were pinning your demise. Rather, they gave you the precise fire you needed to go higher than they themselves would ever reach. Number 12. Your DNA is indestructible. The ones that are selected are constructed differently. They are unable to fully understand something about you. They have seen individuals utterly collapse after going through half of what you have. But you get up. You adjust. You go on as if nothing had occurred. They are irritated because, according to their reasoning, you ought to have broken by now. You ought to feel resentful, disoriented, or at the very least, having trouble getting started. On the contrary, you are stronger, taller, and more lucid than before, and it devours them. What they fail to realize is that you did not learn this. It's not something you learned. Your spiritual DNA contains it. You weren't constructed like the others. Because their basis is weak and is based on ephemeral confidence, external validation, and superficial strength, most individuals disintegrate under pressure. However, Yours is firmly established and unwavering. Fire has tried it, storms have honed it, and the worst of circumstances have validated it. They are unable to duplicate what you have because of this. They are able to mimic your speech, mannerisms, and even your movements. They can't replicate your essence, however. They lack the fortitude you possess. They lack the clarity with which you move. They lack the internal power, spiritual support, and supernatural protection that enable you to flourish where others would fail. They are enraged by it. Everything has been hurled at you. Failures, actions, treachery, disappointments, and thoughts. This time, it would definitely break you. However, each assault simply made the reality more apparent. You don't shatter. You do more than just survive. You change. Every setback made you wiser. Your patience grew with each delay. Every betrayal only removed the unnecessary burden that was impeding your progress. They don't comprehend it, therefore they can't tolerate it. They have no idea what it's like to move with the help of God and weather storms knowing that you'll emerge stronger. However, because you were never constructed like the others, you do. And they will never alter it no matter what they do. 13. They can't comprehend that you always bounce back stronger, therefore you don't fear losing. They don't know how you continue. You never seem to shatter the way they want you to, even after being beaten repeatedly. They dread losing things, which is why you don't. For the majority, loss is a crisis, a tipping point, and an excuse to quit. For you, however, it's simply another phase of change. You always return from a loss stronger, smarter, and more capable than before. They intended to ruin you by taking advantage of your suffering. They believed that you would crumble if they took away enough of your connections, prospects, and feeling of security. They believed that, like them, you relied on outside factors to determine your strength. However, they overlooked the fact that you never need any of it in the first place. Every loss just meant letting go of things that weren't essential, severing fictitious connections, and making room for something bigger. You confuse people because of this. They see you endure grief, financial hardships, betrayals, and failures, and you always come out stronger. They anticipated that you would grow smaller, less self-assured, and more resentful and damaged. Instead, you changed. They stopped recognizing you as you were. Or worse, an uncontrollable situation. Because isn't it the true fear? It goes beyond just surviving. It's because you changed. They are no longer able to put you in the same box. They can't use the same strategies to control you. The same vulnerabilities cannot be used against you. On each occasion when they believe they have reduced you to nothing, you rise above them. They were never ready for someone who isn't scared to lose, so now they're unsure of what to do. Someone who views devastation as a chance. Someone who flourishes when faced with hardship. They are unable to comprehend it. They are unable to stop you because of this. Number 14. Because you have quit asking for permission to be great, you are still standing. You hesitated for a long time. You were waiting, not because you didn't have the power. Waiting for validation, approval, and a green light from individuals who shouldn't have given it. To make other people feel at ease, you played tiny. To avoid overshadowing anybody, you lowered your brightness. You questioned your intuition, wondering whether you were prepared or if you were too much. But the reality, you were always prepared. All you had to do was make up your mind. And you're still standing for just that reason. Because you ultimately made your own decision. You stopped asking permission to be amazing. You no longer waited for approval from others. You no longer need confirmation in order to proceed. And everything changed the instant you did. They're having trouble understanding it. Before they gain control, they may use subtle discouragement, backhanded compliments, or blatant sabotage to keep you questioning yourself. Because they could confine you as long as you hesitated, they flourished on your uncertainty. However, their influence vanished the moment you assumed your position of authority without asking permission. You are now going in a new way. You no longer provide an explanation. Entering a room no longer makes you feel smaller. Before making a choice, you no longer check to see if else agrees. And there's no stopping that transformation, because you become free as soon as you stop seeking permission. You are free to express yourself, to create, to ascend, to lead, and to become who you were always destined to be. Ironically, those who formerly questioned you are now looking on in shock, because they secretly never doubted your abilities. They were aware of your might. They wanted you to be unsure because of this. Now, however, they don't have a voice anymore, because you are no longer waiting. You're doing it. And for that reason, nothing, nor their views, nor their endorsement, now, not even their opposition can stop you. Ultimately, it's not only chance, serendipity, or even perseverance that have kept you upright. You were made for this. That's why. Every assault, every failure, every treachery, they weren't indicators of your demise. They served as exams to validate your innate abilities. And you know what? You survived by evolving as well as by surviving, by deciding not to remain broken, by ascending in a manner they never anticipated. They believed they were preventing you from moving. However, they just served to promote your mission. All they did was remove what wasn't intended for you, despite their attempts to shatter you. And now you're here, untouchable, smarter, and stronger. Not because you retaliated as they had anticipated, but rather because you refused to let their behavior to define who you were. Stepping totally into yourself was the most powerful thing you had ever done. Don't wait any longer. Don't ask any more questions. Don't play any longer. Tiny. And now? They are now forced to observe your continued ascent. Unflinching, unstoppable, and totally unrestricted. Let them ponder. Allow them to have doubts. Allow them to wonder how you're still alive. In actuality, they will never comprehend. They will never be able to stop you because of this. Don't keep this message to yourself if it speaks to you. Please remember to share, like, and comment on this video so that others may get the knowledge they need. Additionally, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and enable the alerts. You won't want to miss any of the upcoming content. Tell me in the comments below, what struck you the most? Let's discuss it. I'll see you in the next one, and be resilient and strong.